In the previously untold parts, janitors, once mocked and overlooked, rose with quiet power. They weren't just cleaners of floors, but keepers of truth, legacy, and justice. Corrupt CEOs were exposed. Empires crumbled. And for a moment, it seemed the storm had passed. But power never lets go easily. As those in the shadows regroup, whispers of betrayal, buried secrets, and deeper conspiracies begin to surface. The victories we've seen? They were only the beginning. Because what comes next isn't just about justice, it's about survival. And not everyone will make it out clean. The boardroom was frozen in stunned silence. Harold Kingston, once the untouchable CEO of Orion Tech, sat paralyzed in his chair, eyes darting from Malik to the board members seated around him. Malik's calm demeanor had morphed into something sharper, steeled by years of quiet endurance. Every face in the room was turned toward him, not Harold. It was a shift in power that couldn't be undone. "I'm sorry." "What?" Harold's voice cracked, the confidence drained from his throat. "You heard me," Malik said evenly. "I'm not just a janitor. I'm part owner of this building, and more than that, I've been watching you destroy everything good my father helped build." Gasps rippled across the room. Malik's words weren't just true, they were precise, cold facts laced with years of suppressed fire. "You're bluffing," Harold muttered. "You're just trying to embarrass me." Malik reached into his messenger bag and produced a thick folder. Documents, property deeds, legal filings, and most damning of all, a partnership agreement with Orion Tech's landlord corporation, Stratford Holdings. It was all real. More real than Harold's half-truths and self-fabricated illusions. This is impossible." Harold's voice trailed off. "Not impossible," Malik replied. "You just never bothered to learn the names of the people cleaning up after you." 25 years ago, Malik's father, Jeremiah, stood outside the decaying warehouse that would eventually become the foundation for Orion Tech's empire. He was a janitor, yes, but also a man of vision. Alongside a childhood friend, George Stratford, Jeremiah quietly invested in small parcels of land across the city, waiting patiently as tech began its inevitable explosion. When George founded Stratford Holdings, he pulled Jeremiah in as a silent partner. Over time, those worthless parcels multiplied in value. Jeremiah never flaunted his wealth. He kept mopping floors, repairing busted pipes, even after his net worth grew into the millions. It was his way of staying grounded, of keeping his son, Malik, rooted in humility. Jeremiah always believed one truth: power doesn't shout. It whispers. Back in the boardroom, the board members were no longer Harold's allies. A few had already picked up their phones, taking pictures of the documents Malik presented. One man, David Stansberry, a longtime investor, stood up and walked over to Malik. "Mr. Wright," he said, extending a hand. "I'd like to hear more about what you propose. Clearly, this company needs a change in leadership." Harold shot up. "You can't be serious. You're siding with him? He's a janitor." David glared. "He's also part owner of the building we're renting. And frankly, he just revealed more character in 5 minutes than you have in 5 years. Harold's face turned beet red. "This is mutiny. It's a reckoning," Malik said. "And it's long overdue." That evening, news of the explosive boardroom reveal spread like wildfire through Orion Tech's headquarters. Employees whispered in hallways, texts flew across departments, and social media rumors swirled. Some believed Malik would be named interim CEO. Others were simply shocked that someone like Harold could fall so fast. But Malik wasn't celebrating. He sat on the edge of a hospital bed, holding his father's frail hand. Jeremiah was fading. His breathing was shallow, and his once powerful hands trembled with the weight of age and illness. "I did it, Dad," Malik whispered. "He knows now." Jeremiah opened his eyes slowly, a weak smile stretching across his face. "I knew you would," he rasped. "But it's not over yet." "What do you mean?" "There's more to Harold Kingston than greed. He didn't build this alone. He had help, dirty help. If you stop now, Everything we worked for will rot under the surface. Malik frowned. Are you saying there's corruption? Jeremiah nodded slowly. Follow the paper trail. Find the offshore accounts. There's a reason Orion Tech grew so fast. It wasn't just innovation. Malik's mind raced. What if the problem wasn't just Harold? What if the rot went deeper, into the company's foundation? Late night, in Malik's apartment, stacks of files surrounded Malik. He had dug into old email chains, property sale records, and internal communications flagged by Orion Tech's lower-level employees. Patterns emerged: contract kickbacks, shell corporations, and silent investors with ties to political lobbyists. He paused at a single name: Everett Kane, the CFO. On the surface, Everett was Harold's shadow, calm, loyal, and clean. But Malik found wire transfers between shell companies registered under Everett's wife's name and foreign accounts in the Cayman Islands. These were the real sources of Orion Tech's early funding. And worse, Malik discovered a file marked Fire Sale. Dated 3 months ago. The file detailed a secret plan: sell Orion Tech to an overseas conglomerate before its stock tanked, and siphon millions out through ghost subsidiaries. Malik's stomach dropped. They weren't just trying to survive. They were trying to loot the sinking ship. Malik stormed into the building early, confronting Everett Kane in the executive suite. You have 10 seconds to explain this, Malik snapped, slamming the fire sale file onto the desk. Everett barely flinched. You've been digging. You're robbing this company blind, Malik growled. While Harold parades around like a king, you're the one pulling the strings. Everett closed his laptop. You think this company's future matters? It's a dinosaur. You're trying to save something that's already dead. I'm trying to save the people who depend on it, Malik said. The janitors, the engineers, the single moms in HR working 2 jobs. Everett leaned forward. Then you're a bigger fool than I thought. Walk away, Malik. You got your revenge. Take your victory lap and leave before it gets ugly. Malik narrowed his eyes. It's already ugly. And I'm not walking away. Later that day, a nervous former employee met Malik in a parking garage. Her name was Elena Torres, a data analyst who had been fired 2 years ago after flagging irregularities in the financials. They buried my report, she said, and threatened me with legal action. Malik nodded. I believe you. Elena handed over a flash drive. Everything's on here: emails, falsified audits, real-time messages between Harold and Everett planning the siphoning of investor funds. Why come forward now? She looked him in the eye. Because you're the first one who's ever fought back and had the power to actually win. Malik didn't go to the authorities yet. He went to the press. Within 24 hours, headlines exploded across every major outlet. Scandal erupts inside Orion Tech. CEO and CFO accused of financial fraud. Janitor turned hero uncovers billion-dollar corruption scheme. Racially abused worker exposes elite corporate crime. Public sympathy for Malik skyrocketed. Employees rallied behind him. Stockholders demanded immediate board action. And Harold Kingston vanished. The SEC began an investigation. A federal warrant was issued. But Harold was nowhere to be found. Malik stared at his phone, the latest text from the lead investigator chilling him. Harold Kingston withdrew $10 million and chartered a private flight. We believe he's headed to a private compound in the Bahamas. The next text was from an unknown number. He's not done. He's just getting started. Malik's heart pounded. What could Harold possibly be planning? A week later, Malik received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single black and white photo. Harold Kingston. Standing next to Malik's estranged older brother, Derek. The caption, handwritten. Some family ties are more dangerous than others. Malik's hands trembled. He hadn't seen Derek in over a decade, not since he left the country under mysterious circumstances. If Harold had found Derek, or partnered with him. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. The boardroom buzzed with tension like static before a storm. Harold Dunn sat stiffly at the head of the conference table, palms clenched together, the veins in his hands twitching. His tailored navy blue suit felt like a shroud. He was losing control, and he knew it. Across from him, Gerald sat in quiet authority, flanked by lawyers, investment strategists, and most intimidating of all, his father, Willis. The very man Harold had ridiculed just weeks ago now sat in tailored gray with the stillness of a lion in tall grass. His presence was undeniable. "Let's begin," Gerald said calmly, sliding a thick stack of documents across the table. Harold didn't touch them. He couldn't. Every sheet of paper was a blow, evidence of financial mismanagement, employee mistreatment, falsified reports, and offshore accounts he never thought anyone would find. Everything Gerald had dug up was laid bare. "Is this a setup?" Harold snapped, desperation cracking his voice. "You set yourself up," Gerald replied coolly. "All we did was look at what you tried to bury." A pin-drop silence settled as the boardroom door creaked open. An elderly black woman stepped in, neatly dressed in a floral blouse and cardigan. Her eyes scanned the room with calm wisdom. Harold blinked in confusion. "Who the hell?" "This," Gerald interrupted, rising to stand beside her, "is Mrs. Loretta Samuels. She was head of the building's cleaning staff for over 20 years, until you fired her without cause last year." Mrs. Samuels looked directly at Harold, her voice steady and low. "You said my hands were too old to clean your floors. But those same hands raised 3 boys, 2 doctors and 1 CEO. Harold looked between Gerald and her, eyes wide. "I'm Gerald's godmother," she said softly. "I knew his father before he became a janitor to teach you humility." Harold's jaw clenched. "So this is all a revenge plot?" "No," Gerald said. "This is justice." 3 months earlier, while Harold bathed in self-congratulations and stock options, Gerald had already begun laying the groundwork. Behind the scenes, he built a task force of loyalists, former employees Harold had mistreated, whistleblowers who had been silenced, and data analysts who traced every penny Harold skimmed. He hadn't just planned a takedown. He'd orchestrated a reckoning. In the basement of the building, Willis stood alone, staring at the mop closet where he had spent so many years in forced silence. His fingers traced the edge of the rusted utility sink. He smiled faintly. Not out of bitterness. Out of closure. Behind him, a familiar voice spoke. "I always knew you were more than a janitor." It was Maria, the HR manager who had watched the unfolding chaos but said nothing, for fear, or perhaps guilt. "I wanted to speak up," she whispered. "But Harold, he made threats." "I understand," Willis said. "But silence can be as loud as injustice." She lowered her head. "I want to make it right," she added. "Then tell the truth," Willis said. "When the time comes." Back in the boardroom, Gerald slid one final paper to Harold, a notice of emergency shareholder meeting and board vote. "You're being removed as CEO effective immediately." A loud murmur rippled through the room. Harold leapt up, slamming his fist on the table. "You think you can run this company without me? You need my name, my experience. You." Gerald cut him off, standing toe-to-toe with him. "We don't need your legacy of abuse. We're building something better, from the ground up." Security arrived at the door. Harold's face twisted into rage and disbelief as he was escorted out. But as he reached the hallway, he spun around. "This isn't over. You think I'm just gonna disappear? I built this company. You hear me? I built it." Later that night, Harold sat in the back of a black SUV, staring at the city skyline. It no longer looked like his empire. It looked like a stranger's domain. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. A deep voice said, "You forgot who really owns the dirt under your feet." Then the line went dead. Meanwhile, Gerald walked into his father's old janitor closet, now converted into a modest meditation room. He looked around at the cleaned walls, the new coat of white paint, the golden placard on the door. Willis Chambers, founder in disguise. Willis stepped beside him. "You did well, son. You taught me how." Willis smiled. "What now?" Gerald looked thoughtful. "Now we rebuild what Harold tried to ruin, brick by brick." But while Gerald prepared to restore the company's mission, something darker stirred in the shadows. Across the city, Harold met with a man in a private lounge. A fixer. Ex-military. Ex-Black Ops. "I want you to find everything on Gerald. His past, his deals, his family. Everything. Destroy him." The fixer sipped his drink. "It'll cost." Harold's eyes narrowed. "I'll pay double." Maria walked to her car in the underground parking garage. The lights flickered once. Then again. She opened her door, then paused. Her windshield was cracked. A single white envelope was tucked under the wiper. Hands trembling, she opened it. Inside was a photo of her daughter walking to school, circled in red ink. A note read, "Stay quiet, or she's next." Gerald Whitmore stood at the edge of a precipice, though he didn't yet realize it. Everything had started to feel off since that board meeting ambush. The revelation of Mr. Elijah, the quiet janitor, being the father of Charles Owens, the building's true owner. Gerald's cushy world of dominance and disdain was slipping from his grip like wet sand. But rather than step back and reassess, Gerald doubled down, grasping at any remaining illusion of control. He paced in his office, teeth grinding as he replayed the meeting. "How the hell could I not have known who owns the building I operate in?" he muttered. "How does a janitor pull strings like that?" But the real question tormenting him, the one he couldn't say aloud, was this. What else had Elijah been quietly watching all this time? His wife Simone. Old family photos lined the mantel, smiles from simpler times, pictures of Elijah in a maintenance uniform beside a younger Charles in college graduation robes. Charles clenched a folder in his hand, legal documents that could dismantle Whitmore's career in a single swoop. But Elijah placed a steady hand on his son's wrist. "Son, revenge is easy," he said gently. "Justice takes wisdom. What we do next needs to heal the people hurt under Gerald's hand, not just punish him." Simone nodded. "This is bigger than Gerald. It's about restoring dignity to everyone who's been stepped on." Charles exhaled slowly. He wanted to burn the entire corporation down. But he trusted his father's restraint more than his own rage. "All right, Pop," he said. "What's the plan?" Elijah smiled faintly. "We don't destroy him. Yet. We unmask him. In front of the people he built his kingdom on." The next day, an internal memo was circulated to Whitmore and Cole employees. All departments are required to attend Friday's full staff meeting. Mandatory attendance. Dress code, business formal. The staff buzzed with speculation. "Is this about the building ownership?" whispered Sandra from HR. "Did y'all see Elijah? He walked in here yesterday like a ghost come to collect," murmured Dion from janitorial. Some felt nervous. Others, oddly hopeful. For the first time, there was a sense that justice might finally have a voice. The conference hall was packed. Employees, executives, maintenance workers, assistants, everyone sat shoulder to shoulder. Gerald stood at the front, lips tight, trying to maintain his usual swagger. Behind him, the projector screen displayed the company logo. He tapped the microphone. "Thank you all for coming. I'm sure you've heard the rumors swirling this week. I'm here to put them to rest." Whispers rustled through the crowd. But before he could continue, the double doors at the back of the room creaked open. All heads turned. Elijah stepped in, dressed not in a janitor's uniform but a crisp black suit. His posture was proud, steady, and unflinching. Behind him came Charles Owens, holding a thick binder, and Simone with a laptop. Gerald's voice faltered. This isn't your stage." Charles walked straight up to the podium. "Correction, Mr. Whitmore. It's not yours anymore. Gasps filled the room. Gerald turned red. Security. No need, Charles interrupted, smiling thinly. I now own 61% of this building's lease rights and partial interest in the Whitmore & Cole operating license. He held up a signed document. I have every right to be here. So does my father. Elijah stepped up beside him. The quiet, humble janitor who had cleaned this building for 25 years, now standing center stage. For the first time, the staff clapped. It began as a trickle, then a wave. The janitorial team stood. HR followed. Even the legal department applauded. Only Gerald stood frozen, his mouth open, fury dancing behind his eyes. Later, in Gerald's private office, the door slammed shut. You set this up, he hissed at Elijah. You tricked me. This is entrapment. Elijah, still calm, met his gaze. You trapped yourself, Gerald. Every time you humiliated an employee. Every time you pushed people down to lift yourself up. Charles added, we have testimonies, Mr. Whitmore. Documentation. You violated not only basic ethics but several HR codes and likely labor laws. Gerald paced like a caged animal. You can't do this. You think anyone will believe a janitor over me? We're not asking them to believe, Elijah said. We're showing them the truth. He handed Gerald a printed packet, statements from over a dozen employees, outlining mistreatment, racial discrimination, and wrongful terminations. You'll have your chance to respond, publicly, Charles added, at a shareholders' town hall next week. Gerald's confidence cracked. You'll ruin me. No, Elijah said. You did that. We're just pulling the curtain back. Over the next few days, seismic changes rippled through Whitmore & Cole. Charles began quietly interviewing department heads. Simone worked with HR to reinstate wrongfully terminated staff. New policies on equity, inclusion, and employee protections were drafted. A special internal committee, led by Elijah himself, began meeting with team members to hear grievances. Gerald, meanwhile, spiraled. He stormed through halls like a man possessed, muttering, micromanaging, lashing out. His power eroded quickly. His executive assistant quit. The board held secret meetings without him. His office door was locked by building maintenance after reports of outbursts and damage. One afternoon, he returned from lunch to find his parking spot gone. A handwritten note taped to the cone read, "Temporary reassignment. Please report to HR for badge reauthorization." He crumpled it, heart pounding. That night, he drank alone, hunched over a glass of bourbon, watching old interview clips of himself on his laptop. And what separates leaders from followers is vision, his past self said on screen. You don't climb a mountain by asking permission. Now, even the summit felt like it was crumbling beneath him. The night before the town hall, Elijah stood outside the building, looking up at the lights. Simone joined him. You sure you want to do this? She asked. He nodded. This isn't just about me anymore. It's for every quiet worker who got spat on and kept going. He paused. I cleaned floors in that boardroom, Simone. I remember when Gerald fired a single mother in front of everyone because she missed a deadline after her son was in the hospital. He said empathy was a disease. That always stuck with me. Simone placed a hand on his shoulder. Let's make sure people hear that story. The auditorium was packed. Cameras recorded everything. Press had been invited. Gerald sat stiffly in the center, flanked by lawyers. He looked like a statue, hollowed out, lips twitching. Charles stepped up first. Thank you all for attending. Today, we peel back the layers of this company's culture. He gestured to the screen behind him. Video clips began playing, testimonies from staff, whistleblower footage, audio of Gerald berating a cleaning staff member caught on a security feed. A gasp rippled through the room. Elijah then stepped forward. My name is Elijah Owens. For 25 years, I've scrubbed these floors, emptied your trash, and watched this company grow. I saw every smile, every betrayal. And for the longest time, I thought silence was safer. But not anymore. He paused. I am also the father of Charles Owens, your new landlord and partial company stakeholder. But that's not what gives me a voice. What gives me a voice is you, everyone here who stayed silent, not because you didn't care, but because you were scared. People stood. Some wiped tears. Some clapped. Then, as the room fell silent again, Gerald stood up. I won't let you paint me as some villain, he shouted. I built this company. I worked for everything. You stepped on people to do it, Charles replied. No one gave me a damn thing. No, Elijah said quietly. But you took everything you could from others. Gerald's voice cracked. You want justice? Fine. I'll show you all what justice looks like. He pulled something from his jacket. People screamed. Security lunged. But it wasn't a weapon. It was a USB stick. He slammed it onto the table. You want to ruin me? Then we all burn, he spat. Play that. I dare you. Charles frowned. What is it? Gerald laughed bitterly. It's not just me. That drive contains emails, videos, cover-ups, involving 3 board members. You think I'm the only monster in this building? Gasps again. Simone's eyes widened. The board members sitting in the front row turned pale. Elijah's jaw tightened. Charles stepped forward cautiously. Gerald's eyes burned. If I go down, I'm not going alone. The air in the conference room was still. Everyone present could feel it, the tremor before the earthquake. Devlin Stone, once untouchable, sat back in his chair with hollow eyes and a disheveled tie, barely holding himself together. Just a week ago, he'd swaggered through this very room with impunity, mocking, humiliating, and belittling anyone who didn't look like him, especially the janitor, Moses. Now, the very foundation of his empire was cracking beneath him. Moses, calm and composed as ever, sat in a modest chair at the far end of the boardroom table. He wasn't in uniform today. No broom, no bucket. Just a neatly pressed suit and a silent strength that unnerved Devlin more than 1,000 lawsuits ever could. Because now everyone knew. Moses wasn't just a janitor. He was the father of Elijah Grant, the newly revealed owner of the entire real estate conglomerate that leased Devlin's company, Stone Tech, its plush downtown headquarters. And the full extent of Devlin's racially fueled abuses was now a matter of public record. And it was just the beginning. Within 48 hours of the explosive board meeting, a viral clip of Devlin's humiliating dressing down was circulating online. The hashtag Justice for Moses began trending worldwide. News anchors discussed it. Talk shows dissected it. Devlin had not just embarrassed himself, he had become a national symbol of corporate racism, and the face of everything wrong with unchecked privilege. Stone Tech's stock plummeted. Investors pulled out. Contracts were frozen. And to make things worse, whistleblowers from inside the company started to speak up. A junior software developer, Kayla, posted a 2-minute TikTok detailing the daily microaggressions she endured at Stone Tech, all enabled by Devlin. That TikTok alone got 4 million views in one day. Then came the lawsuit filings. Dozens of them. Class action suits for discrimination, toxic workplace culture, retaliatory firings. And Moses, he was quiet. Too quiet. While the world wanted his interviews, his outrage, his victory lap, Moses simply declined. Let justice do what justice does, he told Elijah privately. But something else was happening behind the scenes. Something much bigger. Inside the war room, Elijah, newly revealed to the public as not just Moses' son but a wildly successful silent mogul, had been assembling his own team. A mix of lawyers, real estate strategists, investigative journalists, and one particularly brilliant ex-IRS auditor. They called themselves the Gatekeepers. Their goal wasn't just to expose Devlin's racism. It was to dismantle the entire infrastructure of corruption and exploitation Devlin had built over 2 decades, and redistribute the power. "We're not just tearing him down," Elijah told the group. "We're building something in its place. Something just." He reached over and tapped on a massive touchscreen table. A 3D model of the Stone Tech building flickered to life. "His lease is up in 4 months, Elijah continued. "But we're not waiting that long. I want this building repossessed, restructured, and reopened as something bigger than him. Something symbolic." "And what about the employees?" asked Tanya, his head of HR strategy. "There are some good people still stuck in there." "We offer them a way out," Elijah replied. "A way up. We're not just taking back the building. We're offering real jobs. Real futures. Especially to the ones he tried to break." Moses sat in the back, nodding. It was happening. Not with vengeance. With vision. Devlin wasn't done yet. He refused to believe he was finished. Desperate, he began cold calling his high-profile contacts, other CEOs, hedge fund managers, politicians. But the silence was deafening. The same people who once toasted him at galas were now ghosting him entirely. Still, Devlin had one final card to play. A private investigator. If he couldn't salvage his image, he would destroy Moses and Elijah's. He hired a man named Vincent Rusk, a former intelligence agent with no morals and a long history of digging up inconvenient truths for billionaires in trouble. "Find something," Devlin snarled over the phone. "Anything. I don't care if it's real. Just enough to kill this Messiah act. I want blood." Vincent didn't respond. He simply took the payment, turned off the call, and got to work. 3 days later, Vincent uncovered something. An old, sealed juvenile court record. Elijah Grant, age 15, arrested for assault after a brutal fight at a foster home. The file had been scrubbed, sealed by the court. But Vincent found traces. Photos. Police reports. A whisper of a life Elijah had clearly buried. Vincent packaged it all into a sleek digital dossier and sent it to Devlin. "This is your ammo," the message read. Devlin's fingers trembled as he clicked through it. He grinned for the first time in weeks. "Oh, Elijah," he whispered. "You're not who they think you are." The next morning, anonymous documents were leaked to several media outlets. Real owner of Grant Empire hides violent past. Elijah Grant's criminal record, what he's not telling you. One news station even aired an edited version of Elijah's mugshot at age 15. It worked. The narrative began to shift. People started to question Elijah's character. Was he really a champion of justice, or just another powerful man rewriting his own story? The smear campaign hit fast and hard. But what Devlin didn't anticipate was how Elijah would respond. Instead of denying it, Elijah did something shocking. He went live. On every social media platform. No PR spin. No lawyers. Just him, Moses beside him, seated in their modest family living room. "I'm not hiding," Elijah began, staring directly into the camera. "When I was 15, I was in a system that failed me. I got into a fight. Not because I was violent, but because I was defending another foster kid from being abused by an adult. Yes, I was arrested. Yes, I was angry. But that moment changed me." He paused. "It made me who I am. It made me want to build something different. Something where no one would be afraid to speak. Where janitors would be treated like kings." Moses reached over, quietly placing a hand on his son's. "Elijah is not perfect," Moses said softly. "But he is good. And that's more than I can say for a man who steps on others to feel tall." The live stream had over 9 million views in 24 hours. The smear campaign? Dead in the water. Devlin had lost again. But Elijah and Moses weren't celebrating just yet. Because something darker was rising. Behind closed doors, Devlin made one final call to his father's old allies. A network of elite businessmen, bankers, and former politicians who had helped build Stone Tech from the shadows. They called themselves the Stone Foundation. And they were not about to let Devlin's collapse take them all down. This Grant family, one growled over a secure conference call, they're not just a threat to Devlin. They're a threat to everything we've built. They want justice, said another. That's just code for revenge. One voice, quieter but colder, concluded. Then we do what we've always done. We erase the threat. Devlin, back in favor, smirked. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 2 days later, the FBI received an anonymous tip. Elijah Grant's companies were allegedly funneling money through offshore shell corporations to avoid taxes. An emergency federal investigation was launched. Agents raided Elijah's office. Computers were seized. News broke instantly, Elijah Grant under federal investigation. Moses, watching from their living room, looked shaken. Elijah, he whispered. What's happening? I don't know, Elijah replied, his voice tight. But I didn't do this. This is a setup. That night, Elijah met privately with Tanya, his head of HR and one of his most trusted allies. I want to know who in our circle has ties to Devlin or the Stone Foundation, he said. Tanya hesitated. There's something I've been meaning to tell you, she said slowly. About someone on your legal team. Elijah's phone buzzed violently. A private message. One sentence. They're going to come for Moses next. He looked up, eyes wide. Dad, get your coat. We need to leave. Now. Moses, confused, obeyed. As they stepped outside their home, they were met by a row of unmarked black cars. One man stepped out. Vincent Rusk. Mr. Grant, he said calmly, eyes cold as ice. You're coming with us. The elevator doors slid open slowly. The boardroom, filled with tension, fell into stunned silence as Elijah Carter stepped forward, no longer in his janitor uniform, but in a tailored navy blue suit. His gait was strong, his chin lifted high. His son, Malcolm Carter, followed close behind, exuding calm power. On either side of them were two sharply dressed attorneys. Behind them, the building's head of security. Everyone stared. Vincent Harrows, the once feared CEO of Titan Edge Incorporated, stood frozen in his seat at the head of the boardroom table, his smugness gone, replaced with confusion and rising panic. You! He choked out, eyes locked on Elijah. What the hell is this? Elijah took his time walking to the end of the table. He pulled out a chair, the chair that had once belonged to Titan Edge's founder, and calmly sat. I believe you're sitting in my seat, Vincent, Elijah said, his voice quiet but razor-sharp. Whispers erupted. The board members leaned forward, their faces registering shock, recognition, and dawning realization. Malcolm took the floor. Let me clarify for everyone, he said. Elijah Carter is not just a janitor. He is the principal shareholder of this building and a 40% stakeholder in Titan Edge Incorporated, a controlling interest inherited from his late brother, Thomas Carter, the original founder of this company before it was absorbed during the merger you so ruthlessly orchestrated. He paused. My father never wanted this public. He believed in humility, in earning respect through character, not wealth. Gasps filled the room. Board member after board member leaned forward, stunned. Vincent stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. This is a stunt. Sit down, Elijah said. Not a shout. Not a threat. Just a command. And Vincent sat. The entire room felt the weight shift. The ground underneath Vincent's arrogance was gone. Elijah turned to him, his voice laced with quiet steel. You mocked me. Humiliated me. Called me boy in front of your staff. You spilled coffee on my shirt and laughed like I was nothing. You didn't know who I was. But that's not the point. You treated me like dirt because you believed I had no value. A pin could drop. I stayed silent because I wanted to see who you really were, Vincent. And now everyone sees it. Malcolm stepped beside his father. Effective immediately, the board has voted to remove Vincent Harrows as CEO of Titan Edge Incorporated. Vincent lunged forward. You don't have that power. Elijah didn't flinch. We do. And you're being escorted off the premises. Permanently. The security guards moved in. Vincent's face twisted into something grotesque. Rage, disbelief, terror. You'll regret this, he spat. You think anyone's going to follow a janitor? Elijah stood up. The whole room felt his presence. I'm not a janitor, Elijah said. I'm a man who cleaned the filth you left behind, first with a mop, now with justice. The guards took Vincent by the arms and led him out. The doors shut behind him. And with that, silence. A new kind of silence. One filled with awe. One filled with respect. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Elijah didn't take over as CEO. He didn't want the spotlight. Instead, he appointed his son Malcolm as interim CEO while they oversaw a full audit of the company's practices. Dozens of employees stepped forward, finally feeling safe to share what Vincent had done. Wage theft, intimidation, racial discrimination, and more. HR files mysteriously lost were recovered. Entire departments breathed freely again. But Elijah's focus was bigger than revenge. He rebuilt not just the leadership structure, but the company's culture. He turned the janitorial wing into a respected department with full benefits and seats at internal advisory meetings. Every floor now had ethics training, and Elijah personally visited staff weekly, not as a boss, but as a listener. He put dignity back into the workplace. He walked the halls with his mop, not because he had to, because he chose to. And that's what changed everything. 1 year later, a gala was held in the Titan Edge main conference hall. The event honored community partnerships, workforce equity, and mentorship programs started in Elijah's name. Malcolm took the stage and gestured toward his father. This man, he said, taught me that power doesn't make you a leader. Character does. The crowd erupted in applause. Elijah, now with graying hair and eyes full of peace, smiled gently. His legacy wasn't buildings or billions. It was something more powerful. He had shown the world what true strength looked like. Weeks later, Malcolm found an envelope left on his desk. It was unmarked. He opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. Dear Elijah, you won. Not just the boardroom, but the war of dignity. I never understood until I lost it all. You were never beneath me. I was never above you. Vincent. Attached was a check, uncashed, for $10 million, signed over to the Carter Foundation. Malcolm shook his head, folded the letter, and smiled. Sometimes redemption starts with loss. But healing starts with truth. Power is not about titles. It's about how you treat the people no one's watching you treat. Elijah Carter proved that the quietest voice can speak the loudest truth.